You have a subhead up near the top of the book called the Charlottesville Hoax, which is a phrase I've seen a lot in conservative media and in critiques of mainstream media. In that section, you lament how, quote, the fake news narrative that Trump said that there were very fine people on both sides of that tragedy that happened in Charlottesville that followed him around to the end of his presidency, unquote. The broader Trump quote that you do include in there, he says you had some very bad people in that group, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. So how is the very fine people fake news when he kind of said that there's very fine people on both sides? I've seen this a lot, and I literally don't understand why that is a hoax.
Sure. So it's right there in the book. It's the next page over. It's a less than a minute after Trump said very fine people. He said, not the neo-Nazis. I condemn them totally. And that's the exact quote. Not the neo-Nazis. I condemn them totally. And that is, it's right there in the book. And less than a minute later, he says the neo-Nazis, he condemns them. And that was totally ignored because it was, 61 seconds after he had said there were fine people on both sides. So the media can conveniently cut it off. Look, he said fine people on both sides. End of story. But just a minute later, literally 1 minute later, he says, not the neo-Nazis. I don't know how much better he can do than to say not the neo-Nazis.
Right. But he did say there's very fine people on both sides. It wasn't, maybe I'm just a literalist in uses of quotes, but I saw the condemnation of the neo-Nazis myself and internalized it that yes, he condemned those people. And then
Sure.
He also said very fine people on both sides. I just don't see how that in itself is a hoax. So it's your contention that people sort of deliberately chopped off that other context and pretended that it didn't exist?
Yeah, I think over time it morphed into he called neo-Nazis very fine people, which he did not. He said specifically those are not the fine people. I think that, there was originally, it was a big debate over statues and whether or not statues should come down. And there were some people wanted the statues down because they represent something that they don't like. And then some people like the statues and they think they represent something that's defensible. And they were going to march. And then there were violent people on both sides. And obviously the radical people were probably racist with the tiki torches. I'm not denying that. I'm not defending anything at Charlottesville at all. I'm just saying that there are these people who were there who were probably just protesting because they didn't want the statues taken down. And I don't know if I'd call them very fine people, but they're not neo-Nazis, all of them. Some of them were, and they were condemned. Some of them were not neo-Nazis. They don't have to be condemned. And to act like every single person there was a neo-Nazi is pretty laughable. It was treated like it was the greatest hate crime in the history of the world. We've had so much worse in this country. We've had so many horrible racial hate crimes. This is one where I think that there was one person who died and it was a white woman, and we obsessed over this as a nation. We didn't need to. It wasn't nearly as bad as the media made it seem. And they tried to make it like Trump was at the center of it, which was just not true in the slightest.